everyone. My name is Talia, and the title of my thesis is Out of Iran and Out of the Closet, Home, Homo-Nationalism, and the Development of LGBT Advocacy in the Los Angeles Iranian Jewish Community. So this is a pretty niche community if you didn't grow up in it like me, so for a little bit of historical background. In the early 1980s, Los Angeles received an influx of Iranians leaving Iran following the 1979 revolution. Approximately 30,000 Iranian Jews settled in Los Angeles County. Now 40 years old, the community has both thrived as well as continued to encounter the challenges of not only attempting to assimilate into a larger, mostly white Ashkenazi Jewish community, but also post 9/11 US socio-political landscape. Iranian Jews, as can be seen in this article, just entitled The Persian Conquest, are often criticized for being insular, being too involved in their children and community members' lives, and in general for presenting a boisterous, disruptive, and ethnic other into a largely homogeneous community. One site where this tension plays out is in looking at how the Iranian Jewish community's attitudes on homosexuality have been criticized and have changed through their struggle with assimilation, US anti-Iranian sentiment, and Ashkenazi superiority and normativity in Los Angeles. As this rabbi points out in an op-ed she wrote, she attributes the homophobia of the community to the fact that first-generation Persian Jews, immigrants who were raised in the Muslim culture of Iran, have very strong prejudices against gays and lesbians, while American Persian Jews raised in the US and generally college-educated have very different opinions. So the writer is explicitly characterizing what's happening as a culture clash, but this kind of rhetoric and narrative of ethnic tension ignores how LGBT subjectivity and rights fits into the broader narrative of American exceptionalism and liberalism, which puts increased pressure on the Iranian Jewish community in Los Angeles to accept homosexuality. Thus, in this paper, I seek to use my experience growing up within the community to analyze how we have responded to growing support for LGBT rights on a national scale. My main avenue for observing and describing the Iranian Jewish assimilation and new efforts to advocate for LGBT rights in the US is by examining the organization We Do Care. We Do Care was started 3 years ago by two Iranian Jewish mothers who are grappling with how to accept their LGBT children and maintain their status within the larger homophobic Iranian Jewish community. The group has evolved over the past few years from a support group facilitated by an Iranian Jewish psychologist into an advocacy and education group. With the development of specifically Iranian Jewish LGBT spaces, I ask, what forms of sexuality and gender identity are produced within the diaspora? How does acceptance of LGBT rights affect community attempts to assimilate into larger American society? Who is made unintelligible with the introduction of American-specific expressions of queerness? And what is the role of US politics, both foreign and domestic, and the war on terror on this relatively new movement within the community? So to understand this, we need to have both an understanding of US and Western influence on Iranian sexual politics pre-immigration, as well as an understanding of current tensions between Iran and the US that temper Iranian-American attitudes on homosexuality. Homophobic attitudes in Iranian communities are the result of a mix of imperial and economic influences from America, as well as a concerted effort by the Iranian government to spread Western social values during the Pahlavi monarchy. The period of 63 through 78, termed the White Revolution, under Mohammad Reza Shah, was an attempt by the new king to create a clear Westernization curriculum for the country, including instructional texts for medical professionals and the first explicitly anti-gay legislation within the nation's history. Now, as scholar Jasbir Puar points out when she coined the term homo-nationalism, an exceptional form of national heteronormativity is now joined by an exceptional form of national homonormativity, in other words, homo-nationalism. And the United States continues to exert power over Iran through discursive and narrative manipulation, which paints the US as the paradigmatic regime for homosexual acceptance and safety. In contrast, modern-day Iran is painted as exceptional in its cruel treatment of homosexuals, as well as is painted as deeply barbaric and backward in its understanding of sexuality at large. American criticism and intervention in Iranian gay rights matters are used not only to bolster US power against the threat of the Iranian government, but also to control the subjectivities and narratives of LGBT Iranians within America. So I wanted to see whether and to what extent homonationalism has affected the formation of queernesses in the Iranian diaspora, as well as what the larger Iranian American community's perspective now is on what does and doesn't constitute acceptable forms of queerness. So I conducted 7 unstructured interviews, 3 with parents in We Do Care, 2 with second-generation LGBT organizers, and 2 with second-generation LGBT members of the community who don't organize around this topic. In addition to that, obviously growing up as a queer person in this community, this is the product of my own thoughts and ruminations over a really long period of time, so it's partially autoethnographic as well. So the first person that I interviewed was the founder of We Do Care, who explained to me that I never thought I wanted to be an advocate, to do something where people are coming. I wanted to be part of something that gets the family together, to talk about it, be comfortable, and to start new families with our own kids. And I achieved that because, every Friday night in a month, we get together with our kids, and that's what I want, and I achieved that. So Roya's hope was to connect her queer child to the Persian community and create space for herself as well. This was motivated by wanting to make an effort to show her child that she wanted to understand and celebrate their identity, but also wanting to contextualize their queerness within Iranian Jewish space. So after the development of We Do Care, other organizations began to crop up or take notice of We Do Care and create Iranian wings of their programming, like JQ International. As the topic of the panel that JQ has put on here points out, these organizations often frame themselves as safe houses for brown queers and construct this narrative with the help of community members who, using the theory of Joseph Massad regarding the Gay International, I term diasporic informants. Diasporic informants corroborate claims of the inherent backwardsness of the culture of the Iranian diaspora and serve as people who really know how to fix the problem, essentially. So one such informant explains or attributes the homophobia of the community to the fact that we go back to this very communal, tribal existence, but that now we're moving into individual lives where people are allowed to be themselves. And anyone can get on the internet and connect with anybody, and most importantly, my parents can't set the standard anymore about who I am. It's about knowing who I am. So the focus on coming out as the necessary and central tactic for LGBT inclusion further reflects the identity-based focus of the individual identity-based focus of the larger US gay rights movement. And as scholar Marlon B. Ross points out, fixes homosexual identification to a narrative of progress, not only in terms of individual sexuality, but also more fundamentally as a doorway marking the threshold between up-to-date fashions of sexuality and all the outmoded anachronistic others. This narrative of progress carries the residue, and occasionally, the outright intention born within evolutionary notions of the uneven development of the races from primitive darkness to civilized enlightenment. Moreover, such remarks on the collectivist versus individualist society assume that queerness can only exist within a societal structure that is premised on individuality, singular living, detachment from elders, which undermines the queer experience of many Iranians for whom family and communal decision-making remain important. It also forecloses the possibility of queer expression that does not fit within the white, predominantly cisgender, hormonormative US gay landscape. The effect of this normative narrative is not just felt in these newer spaces, but also in the ways that rhetoric among We Do Care parents has changed. So in an interview with one mother, for example, I asked about how her perspective on LGBT people has changed since joining We Do Care. And she explained that nowadays, if you see them on the street, you don't even know who's gay and who's straight. But at those times, they actually wanted to show it to you that they were different. Now they don't have to shave their heads or put on makeup or women's clothes. They can be normal. Go into a doctor's office. The best doctor you know can be a lesbian. So the politics of inclusion and normativity that are championed by these outside organizations advance a "we're just like you" argument that locates the homosexual or queer subject both as American and as entirely apolitical, with normal professions and life paths. And while some forms of queerness are normalized, this can only happen by marginalizing other experiences and representations of sexual and gender variance. In light of all this, I was prepared to find a simple narrative of assimilation, homo-nationalism, and denial of homeland embedded in the Iranian Jewish community's recent embrace of queerness. But I found that even amongst diasporic informants, alongside the mix of homo-nationalist discourse is an organic movement within the community to carve out space for non-normative and distinctly Iranian Jewish sexualities. So, drawing on the work of diaspora studies and queer studies, what I found is that much of Iranian Jewish diasporic life disrupts the coherence of the American nation state through rejecting its model of individuality that undergirds various identity formations, including LGBT ones. Scholars of diaspora studies see diaspora as inherently a place of disorientation, dislocation, and unsettling. What queer diaspora scholars ask, though, is what analytical possibilities open up when we consider the relation between sexuality, identity, and desire on the one hand, and geographic mobility, estrangement, and displacement on the other. And sifting through the history of the relationship between Iranian Jewry, the state, and the West reveals that multiple forces animate the sexual politics and social organization of the Iranian Jewish diaspora, as well as how it has begun to change. So I propose that the lens of queer diaspora serves two productive or generative functions for the community in that it destabilizes normative, implicitly white iterations of queerness, and it also forces individuals and institutions to grapple with the histories of imperialism, displacement, and cultural erasure that the community has faced. This challenges homo-nationalist organizations that operate under a West and the rest paradigm, which sees Western conceptions of homosexuality as an outgrowth of an overall superior social and national culture. So perhaps the collectivist kinship practices of the Iranian Jewish community, often prescribed as a barrier to LGBT liberation, could be reframed or read as queer in and of themselves, in that Iranian Jewish kinship represents a set of distant practices that dislocate white Western sexuality and sociality. The sentiments of parents in We Do Care, which are hyper-focused on getting their queer and seemingly Americanized children to engage with the larger diaspora, is a reflection of this. This brings me to discuss one of the sites where I see queer diaspora developing, which is the home, and particularly the home as a gathering and ritual space. All of my informants identified the home as a significant space for personal identity formation and for the preservation and perpetuation of certain aspects of Iranian Jewish cultural and kinship practices. One second-generation informant explained, "I never really came out to my family, I just kept showing up. Someone died, I showed up. Someone got married, I showed up. Someone had a baby, I showed up. But people who go down the wrong path stop showing up, so I kept showing up. In my docs, in my button-ups, and finally in a suit one year on tea. Traditionally, I think someone like me would just start to disappear. I think my family realized that too. So their response was to keep embracing me and inviting me, and my response was to keep showing up." So this shows how the boundaries of the Iranian Jewish diasporic home are relatively elastic and allow for stretching and space-making even in the most tense situations. The home as a gathering space in particular is the site of queer possibility and intervention because as queer bodies enter the space, they assert the existence of queer Iranian Jewishness in a different way than the existence of than homo-national spaces that tout multiculturalism and locate queer liberation outside of Iran and Iranian culture. As South Asian queer diaspora scholar Gayatri Gopinath points out, while many lesbian and gay texts imagine home as a place to be left behind, for queer racialized immigrant subjects, staying put becomes a way of remaining within the oppressive structures of the home, while imaginatively working to dislodge its heteronormative logic. So out of this, what I see happening is that the amalgamation of accumulated cultural memory, ritual and tradition, and the unavoidable choice between hybridity or erasure facing the community has created a climate of queer diasporic possibility. Working within a queer diasporic framework that locates queerness within the diaspora affirms the existence of non-normative queer identities and rejects the idea that Iranianness and queerness are diametrically opposed.